If you're new to gardening, farming, or just permaculture in general, this is the one tip that everyone's going to tell you that everyone is also going to ignore. But in this video, my hope is to really illustrate to you why you really shouldn't ignore it. This all behind me is Sprout Nursery, and we operate out of a rental property that's 5 acres. It's a lot of land. When I first moved here and started growing plants, this place looked a lot different than it does now. This terraced hillside was just a hill with a whole bunch of blackberries on it. And I have since created several terraces. All these trees right here, hazelnut trees and a lot of other things, they weren't here when I first moved in. Another little terraced hill. It doesn't look like a whole lot now, but in the summertime, this thing is popping with all sorts of cool plants. This is one of my secondary nursery areas in here. This area back here, what was just a chicken yard, now has mulberries, persimmons, sea buckthorn, and a lot of other things. Nearly every fence line is lined with perennial edible or medicinal plants or nut trees. Right here is my primary nursery area that I use during the spring and summer. So much work has been done in the greenhouse. Since we've been here, the garden area, the main annual garden area, has doubled in size. Most of the garden is lined with sunchokes, a big line of willows. A lot of work has been done in this orchard. Chestnuts and elderberries, more chestnuts, willows. Even when we look on the outskirts of the property, apples, chestnuts, and other types of trees. It doesn't look like a lot in winter, but the western border of the property has a whole lot of stuff going on. And so what's the problem with all this, really? Well, it's all entirely too much for me to manage as the main person doing the work here. And all this can be neatly packaged in a saying that goes, work small, fail small, meaning the smaller the job you do, the less the consequences of it failing are. And so buckle up here. I'm kind of going to just rant a little bit in this video. That's going to be how this video is. And so you can kind of just step away and just listen to the audio or whatever you want to do. But if you're interested in my perspective, here it goes. My particular situation is pretty unique in that, very unique, I think, because we live on a rental property. And so with that, it means, I'm not expecting, or I'm not going to be capable or even allowed to take a lot of the plant material with me whenever we eventually leave here. And also with it being a 5-acre property, that's a lot of land, and I have essentially spread out to almost every corner of this property. There's something planted here. And so what that means is that the work I've done over the years here is very hard for me to manage, labeling trees and plants. Labels fall off. What are the best labels? I tried metal labels, plastic labels, stapling them into trees, nailing them into trees. It's impossible for me to check every plant or tree every year to make sure that labels are properly placed. Because after I leave here, no one's going to know what the full picture is of what's going on here. And plants are getting overgrown. I can only weed whack. Like last summer, I had to weed whack almost every day to try to keep up with what was going on. And then by the time I was done weed whacking, it was almost time to start weed whacking again, because by the time I finished where I started, we had grown up enough. And so that's a big challenge. Deer browsing, protecting young plants from deer browsing, all these things, and it stretches you. The more you spread out on your land, the more you're spreading yourself out as far as what your time commitment's going to be. You might think, oh, it'll be fine, I'm just going to plant them over here. In my experience and what I've learned is, and what I'm going to follow now after a decade of doing this kind of stuff is, no, I'm going to make a plan in place. It has to be protected. If I'm going to plant it, I'm going to make sure I prepare the hole properly and all these things. And And you can make things really difficult. It's interesting that some of the most thriving chestnut trees I have here are the ones I literally just stuck the shovel in the ground, lifted up soil, not even dug an actual hole, just a slit in the ground, shoved the tree in there, and stomped it shut. And so basically a slit in the ground, not a legit hole. And those are the ones that are thriving the most. And whereas the ones that I dug actual, like, nice little holes, put mycorrhizal fungi in there, all this stuff, they're doing good, but not any better than the ones I'd just kind of slammed in the ground. And like, I would not have learned that unless I had taken the time and just gotten a whole bunch of trees and put them on the fence line. And so that's something else, is kind of, when you have a large piece of land, you have the ability to have the chase, like, shiny object syndrome, that happened to me, like shiny objects, chestnut trees, like, for example. I got super jazzed up about chestnut trees, put them on the whole fence line all over the place here. It's going to be pretty sweet in about 10 years when we have like a chestnut overstory over one of the livestock areas here. Same with the hazelnuts and walnuts and all the other perennial edible plants that are here. It's going to be interesting to see which will survive long term without anybody managing them. Mark Shepard, who is one of the more prominent figures pushing this regenerative agriculture concept. You should look him up. I can't remember the name of his operation, but he's got this ethos that he goes by, that he calls for managing trees and stuff. It's the stun method. That's a sheer total utter neglect. And I kind of have been standing by that ethos here. To really find out what plants and trees do well in your area, you have to plant a bunch of stuff. You can do your research, and you can go to nurseries that are in your local region and stuff and get things that they think are good. But with all the microclimates that, especially where I am in Washington State, like, all the microclimates, there's going to be things that might thrive 20 miles away from me, but do not do as well right where I am in the foothills of the mountains. And so for me to figure those things out, there's no other nursery near me that is growing in the exact area that I'm in. And so I need to plant a whole bunch of stuff to see what survives, to see what areas of the land are the best. I'm not going to do all this soil testing on a 5-acre property that I'm renting. And so, all this boils down to, if I was to do all this over again, like, I would have, well, that's impossible to say, because this has all been a learning journey, and I had to have gone through all the things I've gone through now to get where I am. It's that classic thing, you make the mistakes and you learn from them. You can talk to as many people as you want, but when it comes down to it, and you're on your property and you got plants that you're interested in, like, you can do as much reading as you want and everything, but monetary limitations, financial limitations, like time limitations, you're going to do what you can. And just ultimately, my goal was just to get plants in the ground. That's what I did, God damn it. So, yeah, I mean, if I was to give advice, if you're still listening to this, and you're getting into permaculture and all this stuff, and you don't really know what to do, I'm just going to say it, and you're probably going to ignore it. Try to start as small as possible. Do your research as much as you think is necessary. Visit. If I had to give I think some of the best advice that I think I would have benefited from if I would have actually, I did it, but I could have done it more, is looking up and visiting as many permaculture, like, perennial farm type operations that you can in your area. What kind of stuff are they growing? What's been working for them? What challenges have they had? What are they growing? And then base your decisions off of those, like the closest ones that are to your area. That's going to give you a really good idea of what is possible. You can read books, you can look online, but nothing can beat actually going to other people's operations and seeing like the unique strategies that they use that have been successful for them, or the ones that they thought were novel that didn't work at all for them. And so using those ideas and strategies, you can then apply those to, if you have a really large piece of property, start in your zone 1. When you learn about permaculture, you'll learn about zones and everything. But start at the immediate areas that you're going to be interacting with. Again, that's just the advice that you're probably not going to listen to if you're anything like me. But if you were to go about this in the smartest, most practical, time-saving way, it would be to just start with a simple small area that you can manage. Don't do a whole big garden like I did where you have to water. So where watering is like a thing every day. Like we have to get out and water or all the work we did is going to die. All the plants we put in the ground are going to die. And it takes half an hour to water everything. Half an hour might not sound like a very long time, but in the mix of everything that's all going on in life, that's a significant chunk of your time. You could be doing other things, not just sitting there spraying water over plants. And so I'm going to leave it at that. Every once in a while, I'm going to do these kind of rant things, and if you're interested, I don't really care who listens to this. I just hope that some of the things I'm saying resonate with people who are interested, and maybe you have some takeaways. She's going to wake up when I do this. But, I'm happy to have conversations with people about this. If they have some other things to add or have other things you just want to say. Comment sections in the videos have been pretty much crickets for the most part. But I'm here and I'll respond to you. You could share ideas. And, so signing off.